Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Bill Flynn of Catalyst Growth Advisors on the show. Bill, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, Gresh, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I wanted to read a little bit more about all the awesome things that Bill is doing so you can hear and learn a little bit more about him. And Bill has more than 30 years of experience working for and advising hundreds of companies, including startups, where he has a long track record of success. After working for 10 different high-tech startups in different market segments, such as speech recognition, e-commerce, and affiliate marketing, where he was the VP of sales 8 times, twice a CMO, and once a GM of a division of a $100 million, multi-million dollar IT service company, he pivoted to becoming a business growth coach. Prior to, he had 5 successful outcomes, 2 IPOs, 7 acquisitions, including a turnaround during the 2008 financial crisis. Bill is a multi-certified growth coach, has a certificate with a distinction, Foundations of NeuroLeadership, is a certified predictive index partner, author, international speaker, and Bill's best-selling books, Further, Faster, The Vital Few Steps That Take the Guesswork Out of Growth, continues to garner a 5-star rating. Bill, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am ready. Fire away.
Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I know you're doing so many phenomenal things. I wanted to kind of, start from the beginning, so to speak, hear a little bit more about your, what I call a CEO story. We'll let you get started with all the awesome things you're working on.
Yeah. So I kind of started being a CEO, starting my own business, because I think it's a shame that really good ideas, really good people, really good businesses either die or struggle for completely preventable reasons. So I sort of dug into figuring out why that was. I've been studying business for almost 30 years now, really a lot more intensely in the last 4 to 5. And I've found that there's a few things that really good leaders and really good companies do, and they're the same few things, and they do them really, really well. So that's sort of how I got to where I am after that intro that you gave me. You missed it. I'm also been a contributor to the CEO Blog Nation.
Yes, you have been a contributor, and we've definitely been proud to have you contribute so many times, and you're doing so many awesome things to help make us an even better platform. And so I know one of the big things we're always talking about is kind of resources and making sure that we kind of tap into the minds of really successful people that have so much insight like yourself. Is that what you do, from your kind of business coaching standpoint, able to really guide people into how to be successful, or how would you kind of quantify exactly what you do to support these clients?
Yeah. So my little tagline is I help leaders take the guesswork out of growth. Mm-hmm. Most leaders are guessing. And if you look at the data from the last 25, 30 years, we don't guess very well. I think if you started a business in 1994, by 1999, half of you were out of business. And by 2009, I think it was, 75% were out of business. And if you went to full 25 years, only about 14 or 15% were left. So the longer you're in business, the more likely it is that you go out of business. And I said it's completely preventable in most cases, but we've sort of never been taught that. So that's what I do, is I teach a framework and really more of a mindset, which starts from having the leader fire him or herself from the day to day. Because your job really, once you've sort of gotten through that startup knothole and you've got a business that's predictable and somewhat scalable, you get somewhat of a business model. The next thing you have to do is start figuring out, what should I do less of? Because my job now is really the business, not the product. So that's sort of what I help leaders do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny you said that phrase, and it really stuck with me, because I was going to ask you, do you feel like some of the time, the reason that businesses haven't been as successful as they could be is because they haven't been taught that, they haven't learned that it isn't something like I guess they could have went to school for it, but it may not have been taught in the right way in school. So it kind of gets you in that same place.
Yeah. It's a great question, Gresh. I looked that up because I was curious. I said, how do we teach people how to be CEOs, how to lead an organization of disparate people and figuring out the problems of their customers and doing them in the best possible way, delivering, sort of excellence to their clients. And I really couldn't find anything. We're taught how to be good in finance or engineering or, marketing or something like that. But there are very few places you can go to sort of teach to run an organization. Most people who are really good at it are good at it because either they had a really good person that they followed, or that person that they followed made so many mistakes over time and just kept getting better and better and better and learning from the mistakes, and then they became a really good CEO. But other than that, it's really hard to do. So that's sort of what I've made my mission is. I just want to share the few secrets that I've learned over 30 years of studying and doing it myself, and see if they fit with other people. And most of the time they really work well. So yeah, no one, as far as I can tell, you're not taught how to be a CEO. You got to figure it out on your own. It's sort of like being a parent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you should be a parent. Everybody can be a good parent, right? Well, it's not so true.
Yes, just have the kid. You'll figure it out on the way down, or build the plane on the way down, so to speak. And so I know your book has loads of gems and information in it too. Could you touch a little bit more on that and what we can find, in your book? All right, and I'll pause here. And I appreciate that, Bill. And I know one of the things that, you've done is you've been able to kind of distill a lot of that information into your book. Could you talk a little bit more on what we can find in your book on how we can be more successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners?
Yeah. So what I found is that there are three things really that the best leaders do, and the best leadership teams. I don't want to say it's just a leader. It's also the team that helps the leader. The first is the team. The sort of little phrase I came up with was performance is a team sport. Most people are on a team. I follow Marcus Buckingham, his work at ADP, and he talks about it, some survey he did or some research he did a year or two ago, that over 80% of all of us at work are on at least one team. About 70% of those folks are on more than one team, and about 60% of those folks are on more than that. And most of those teams in that third group are not represented in the org chart. So what you have to do is you have to really know how to craft, grow, and help to create the environment for really good teams, and not just one team, but teams of teams. Because most of the businesses are like a crossword puzzle, right? They're all interlocking, and things are dependent upon other things. Mm-hmm. So you got to be really good at teams. The second thing you have to do is understand that if you want your business to scale, you have to think about systems and processes. And the one really big system that overlays all of them to me is your strategy and execution system. Mm-hmm. You have to have a decent strategy that sort of is unique. The best strategies are typically unique strategies, like Southwest or Dyson or Nest or someone like that. Mm-hmm. And then you will have to execute on it, because that's basically what you're executing on, is you're executing on your strategy. And then if your strategy is always going to have issues with it, because it's sort of organic, right? Your customers' issues change, technology changes, all sorts of stuff changes. So your strategy at a high level probably stays about the same, but you have to sort of mix and match a little bit. The best strategy on the planet, at least in terms of public companies, is Southwest. Their strategy is called Wheels Up, and the job is to get the plane in the air, and they do everything around that. They've modified their strategy a little bit over time. And they focus on that. So strategy and execution are really two sides of the same coin. And then lastly, if you want to be a growth company, cash should be your primary financial growth metric. Why? Because cash is an antecedent to growth. You have to invest in front of growth. So what I teach all of my clients is, okay, let's figure out what we want to look like in 2 or 3 years. How much will that cost? Okay, now let's build a plan to generate the cash to pay for the stuff that we want to do. Because you might have to hire some more people. You might have to build a factory, whatever it is. You got to do stuff in front of it to be able to support it. So those are the three things. Teamwork, performance is a team sport. You have to create a cohesive and coherent system of execution and strategy, and use cash as your primary financial growth metric.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And I think so many times, as you said, so well in the beginning, that so many times as leaders, we're just kind of going through the motions or not really staying focused on what we're trying to do. And I love especially that last point, because so many times we forget about where we're going and what do we need to get there, and how do we break that down as far as steps and actions or systems that we need to put in place, or the team that we need to have to be successful so that we can get to where we want to be. And I think so many times we forget all of those integral pieces, just like the leg of a table. If we don't have one of them, it sounds like they can all fall over.
Yeah, good summary.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you might have already touched on this, but I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce. And this could be for yourself personally or your business or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both. So I sort of have two things that I think set me apart. At least that's what I'm told. One is we've touched on a little bit. I sort of have this cradle to grave perspective on business. I've been at 10 startups. I'm 5 for 10, so I've seen success and how it works. I've seen failure in startups, and I also have worked with dozens, really hundreds of companies that are beyond startups, and I've worked for them or I've done that. So I've seen that. So I basically studied success and failure, and I had the experience and the research to do that. So I have a generally good idea of what has worked and what hasn't worked. My brain works pretty well at finding patterns. So I kind of have a pretty good idea of how to distill it down into sort of simple things. And then lastly, speaking of simple, I have a first principles approach really to life and to business. And so I weave neuroscience into everything that I do, because that's a first principle. Your brain basically controls almost everything that's around you. And I've been studying cause and effect for years. So I work with folks to help them understand, for instance, do you know exactly what causes your customer to buy from you? And most of the time when I ask this, I get an answer, but they're almost always wrong. And you ask your customer, they don't actually really know why either. So I'm a big fan of jobs to be done, if you're familiar with that philosophy, which basically says that that people don't buy products, they hire solutions to help them make progress. They have a struggling moment and they hire something to help them make progress. And if there's something that they're working now that isn't, they fire that and hire something else. And understanding the sort of functional, social, and emotional needs that people have when they make a purchase or make a decision of any kind is the underpinning of jobs to be done. It's been around for like 30, 35 years. It is like magic. If you can do it, it's like magic. You've probably already seen it. You're probably familiar with the Snickers commercials that are out about satisfaction.
Yeah.
So the gentleman, Bob Mesta, who's really one of the co-originators of the philosophy in the 80s and 90s, was the guy who worked on that campaign. And he found out that Snickers doesn't compete with Milky Way, because people hired Snickers because of fatigue. And they wanted the energy, and they found that the peanuts and whatever was in it gave them some energy, where Milky Way is more of an indulgence. It's like brownies or cookies. So they started to focus on, it's about satisfaction and et cetera. And now they sell, I think, $3.5 billion worth of Snickers bars every year. And it was from that understanding of that sort of cause and effect. So it's kind of a cool model.
No, it's very cool. And I hadn't heard of that, that effect, but it makes so much sense when you kind of break it down. And I think so many times as, leaders, as you said so well, sometimes we don't understand the underpinnings as much as we could and understand really what really is causing the effect that we have and why is a person really buying from us. We think it's because of X, Y, and Z because, somebody just wants a candy bar. But in reality, it's something a lot deeper than that. And I think I love that you're able to obviously have the experience that you're able to speak to, but you're able to kind of implement that and look at businesses and be able to kind of see those patterns or those trends based off your kind of study, your experience, obviously, and be able to kind of hopefully chart people to the right place of success.
Hopefully.
Yes. Awesome. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that you feel makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah. So I think for me, or for anyone really, and I kind of said already, is you need to figure out a way to make yourself useless, because your job isn't to run the business anymore, as I mentioned. And if you're running the business on a day-to-day, that's a doing thing. And leadership is more about thinking than it is about doing, especially if you're trying to predict the future. That's about insight and creativity and innovation. And I ask this a lot, and I ask this of you, Gresh, so when do you get your best ideas? What are you doing?
Usually not working, which is funny enough, in the shower, or I could be running or working out, doing something like that away from the work.
I have asked hundreds and hundreds of people this question, CEOs, and it's the same thing. I was riding my bike, I was in the shower, I was sort of waking up in the morning, it's another one. And that's because your brain is quiet, right? And that's when you get your best ideas. And if you want to do innovation and insight and creativity, that's what you have to do. So you have to sort of make yourself use this. And the best story I've heard from this that I think is illustrative is David Marquette, who wrote Turn the Ship Around, if you're familiar with that book.
No, I'm not.
So he was a Navy sub commander, and he was going to take over the top sub in the fleet. But at the last minute, one of the other captains had to leave his ship, so he got reassigned. And when you're assigned a sub, you spend a year studying the sub as the commander.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't have time to do that. He went on to a new ship, and the ship he took over, the sub he took over, was the worst performing sub in the entire fleet.
Wow.
And since he didn't know how to run it, he couldn't do it the regular way. He couldn't give orders. He had to basically create an environment where his team would help him run the ship. And he said, if you showed up on my sub, you wouldn't know who was the captain, because everyone's saying, I intend to do this. And like, go ahead and do this. And he said, the only order he gave was if it was potentially taking a human life. That was the only one that was his. Everything else, he sort of spread out to his group. And his second inspection, which was, I think, a year and a half later after he took over, was the highest score that the Navy has ever given in the history of the Navy to a submarine. So he took it from the worst performing to the best performing. Why? Because he took himself out of the equation. He let the 135 or so people who were on the ship, he gave them their brains back, and he let them do it because they were better at, navigation in the steam room and all this other stuff than he was. It's a great story, and there's a cool little video and like one of those doodle drawings about it in there. But David Marquette, it's a fascinating story, and that's a hierarchical environment. If someone in a hierarchical environment can do that, boy, it's got to be something that you can do as a CEO that's not in that kind of militaristic environment.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely not talking about life or death. And we definitely, if they can be accomplished there, we definitely can accomplish it ourselves. And I think it speaks to sometimes as leaders, we often can be the bottleneck, to our organization's growth. And I think not recognizing that, not allowing people to be in their zone of genius, so to speak, and do what they do so well or know so well, not only, inhibits, their growth, but also inhibits the growth of the organization as a whole.
Exactly. Yeah. Vern Harsh says all the time, the bottleneck's at the top of the bottle.
There you go. Absolutely. And so now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice, could be around leadership, or it might be something you would tell yourself if you were to hop into a time machine, or maybe a client as well.
Yeah. So the nugget I have is few things truly matter in business or in life, but those that do matter tremendously. And as a leader or as a parent or as a friend or whatever, you should spend more time there. Pareto was a pretty smart guy, right? The 80-20 guy. It applies to the clothes in your closet, the decisions that you make in a day, the friends that you have, and how much time you spend with them. We really focus our time and energy on just a few things. And it's mostly because our brain was designed to really only think about a few things. And our brain is, the last major upgrade on our brain was somewhere between 10 and 50,000 years ago. So we're working with some outdated hardware and software, and it's being applied to a really strange thing, and it has all these hacks itself. And one of the things is to shortcut things. And so why don't we use that as an advantage as opposed to a disadvantage? We have all these biases. So let's just focus on a few things. And that's why, my book is about those few things, those three things. And I think the best leader we've ever had in the history of at least my lifetime and any research I've ever done is living today. And his name is Alan Mulally. Are you familiar with Alan Mulally?
I'm not. Tell us more about him.
He's not really well known, which I think he's better than Steve Jobs or Sam Walton or Jeff Bezos.
Really?
Why? Because he turned around Boeing commercial aircraft in the middle of 9/11. They were coming out of it better than they went in, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Then he did it again at Ford during 2008. And about months after he left, Ford became the #1 car manufacturer again. The last time they were that was like 80 years earlier, before GM took them over. And most people don't know who this guy is. And he focused on just a few things. There's a great book called American Icon, which tells the Ford story. And it's a wonderful story. And it's really about focusing on just a few things that truly matter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. And one of my absolute favorite books is The One Thing, because it kind of focuses on those essential things. But I wonder if, you maybe can let us know, because I'm sure a lot of people are listening. They're like, how do I find what those one things or those few things are? And is that what you're outlining in your book? Those are the things that you need to do that really, move things forward.
Yeah. So the thing is slightly different for each company and leader. But if you focus on team and then you figure out what are our best teams? What are the best organizations? What are the best people to put in what positions, right? Because people do everything. I think people is the most important aspect of anything. And I don't say people in general, because I think teams are that linchpin from an individual or a culture. It's the other. But, if you think about people and yourself, we're all really spiky. We're all really sort of skewed towards one way. Mm-hmm. And your job as leaders to figure out the best parts of those people and to try to craft them together. So as I've heard once, which I think is really true, don't try to make someone well-rounded. None of us is well-rounded, but try to make the team well-rounded, right? That's what you need to do. So that's definitely something that I focus on each one, right? Figure out your team, look at them, how to put them together the best way. That's one example of really trying to craft and focus on just one of those few things.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I always say, so often that sometimes we forget that human aspect of business. We forget the people. We forget, and I love how you said, not to be a well-rounded individual, but to be a well-rounded team, because I think so many times, there's so much kind of information and things that are telling you to strengthen your weaknesses or, do those things that maybe you aren't strong at, rather than, doubling down on the strengths of the things you do well. And as a leader, we should be looking at what those strengths are and putting those puzzle pieces together, as you said so well, so that holistically the team as a whole is able to accomplish and really reach those goals.
So true.
Awesome. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Bill, what does being a CEO mean to you?
So I think a CEO has to do three things really well. And I've touched on them a little bit, but I'll sort of summarize. One is you got to pick a great team for yourself, right? And the team isn't necessarily people who just report to you. You could also have an advisory team, but the people you surround yourself with should be should have skills, abilities, and knowledge that round you out. So you can go to certain people when you need it, whether it's internally or externally. So you really got to figure that out. Then you have to create a safe environment that helps people to be their best selves every day and to pursue their strengths as often as possible. The work from Marcus Buckingham says that we have to do it about 20% of the time. As long as we can do what we really love about 20% of the time or more, we're more fully engaged at work. We're more satisfied and fulfilled. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's sort of that light at the end of the tunnel, right? As long as you have something to look forward to, it's like vacation.
Right.
As long as I know the vacation's coming in a few months, I can get through some tough times.
Days, yeah.
I think if I'm going to enjoy something at least one day out of this week or parts of this week, I'm going to get to do something I really love. It helps make the harder stuff a little less hard. And then lastly, I think this is really important, is you have to have courage to be a leader. You can be humble like Alan Mulally, as I mentioned, or not like Bill Gates. You can be charismatic like Herb Kelleher from Southwest, or not like Warren Buffett. You can have empathy like Jacinda Ardern, or not like Jeff Bezos. You can have integrity like Mulcahy, or not like Steve Jobs. You can be honest like Marcus Aurelius, or not like LBJ. But the one thing I found across all leaders is courage in one form or another. We can argue how great or not each of these leaders is or was, but it's hard to deny that every single one of them had courage. So I think you got to do that. You got to focus on those three things. Great team, create a psychologically safe environment, as Amy Edmondson says, and have courage. If you can do those things, you'll be a good leader. You got to have that compelling vision, of course, right? It's part of it. But if you can surround yourself with people who can help you realize that vision and do those three things, I think you'll be a great CEO.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love especially that courage piece, because a lot of times when you have that vision, you have that goal, and to be able to hire the right person or to be able to create that environment that may be even counter to what everybody else says you should be doing, a lot of that does come down to being able to be courageous and be able to go a different path than everybody else has gone. So I love that definition, because it, to me, gets to all of those different aspects, just like your framework does, on how we can be successful and we can be the best CEOs that we're capable of being.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bill, truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you, get a copy of the book, and find out about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Yeah. So I'm more about the message than the money. So the book I gave away for free on my website. You can buy it from Amazon or Audible or one of those places, if you want to pay money, which is great. I get, a few bucks every time it happens, but I will never make the money back that I put into the book. It's more about getting the word out and trying to help people make their lives a little bit better. And my book, and I write a little bit, as you know, because I've helped you out with the Blog Nation stuff. So I put a post out twice a month. They're all really short, 1 to 2 minute reads, and there's almost always something of action to do for the person who's reading it. And that's on my website, which is catalystgrowthadvisors.com, and all my contact info and Twitter and all that kind of stuff is on there too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. We will have the links and information in the show notes so that everybody can, find out about all the awesome things that you're putting out. Of course, get that free copy of the book if you don't want to get it from Amazon or Audible. But I appreciate you, because I think so many times, you try to be successful. You can't always guarantee success, but I think the best way you can do that is to try to learn from really successful people that have a deep understanding of how exactly to be successful, and it gives you a higher likelihood of being successful. So why not take advantage of that? So I appreciate you for giving us all that wisdom, and of course creating so much content and information for us to learn from as well. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Josh.
All right, and I'll cut it off here. All right, and another virtual high five naturally
right,
for the
sir,
bonus section. And then what I'll do again is we'll follow back up as we get closer to the time in that bonus section, and then the podcast itself will go live too. But definitely looking forward to hopefully collaborating. Loads of great information. So I appreciate you dropping so much knowledge on us.
No problem. Thanks a lot, and thanks for putting me in your post. I think I got the most daily views I had ever gotten.
Nice.
From the post I put in with you. And I actually I reached out to WordPress and said, am I getting hacked?
Really?
Like all of a sudden, like 90 or 100 people in like an hour just went to my website.
Yeah.
It's like,
nice.
Cool.
No,
so
I always enjoy hearing that stuff. We never obviously hear that stuff. So it's always good to hear, which is why, funny enough, I always tried to reach out to people that had contributed, because I felt like, I don't even know everybody's voice, let alone, get the opportunity to interview them.
Of course,
so that was one of my big goals for the podcast. So I appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Stay safe and sound.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.